It's Sunday, and just a little bit after one. As I said in my before my workout this morning, a little under the weather. Not sure what it is. Not enough to put me on my back, keep me down, keep me from doing everything that I normally do over the course of the day, but just enough to make the things that I do feel a little more difficult. Uh, Not quite as fun, nowhere near as pleasant, but I'm getting through. Hey, Barefoot Burpees here. Um, so I'm feeling a bit worn out. Uh, Again, just enough. I got my reps in. I got my morning walk in. I got my morning afternoon or my morning walk run in. 2 sessions of yoga so far, but it has left me feeling a bit out of it. Like I could use a nap, but I'm not going to take a nap for right now. I'm all for taking a nap if you need one. Actually, I think even if you don't need one, short period laying down in yoga, you can do Shavasana, which is the almost like a yoga nidra, and very restful. 15 minutes or less, and you can do it, and you're completely refreshed. I actually did it right after my second yoga practice, and did feel a little more energetic. Barefoot Burpee says that you have a busy schedule. I sort of do. In description, it sounds busy, but in practice, it's just sort of a seamless. I go to this, I go to that. Everything almost feels spontaneous. Um, some of the things on my mind that I put in the title for the conversation, and we'll see if I make it, if I'm able to describe it. And Barefoot, I'd be interested in a little bit of your input in this as well, because I'm thinking conspiracy theories. I'm thinking about the movie The Matrix, how it all ties together, and I put yoga in there as well. Because here's the thing about yoga. Um, for whatever reason, when people hear that you meditate or that you practice yoga or qigong, or you practice some alternative style um, healing modality, people will say, well, what do you think of? And then it leads to some sort of conspiracy theory. Barefoot says, I don't think anyone went to the moon. Um, See, that's a funny thing. Um, I remember watching it on TV. Granted, I was only 4 years old. I was easily fooled. I fully believed that someone could take my nose. So who's to say I wasn't fooled about the moon landing? Um, Although technology at the time I don't think existed. But here's the thing. Here's why I tie it together with yoga um, and Buddhism as well. It's that yoga doesn't ask you to take the word of anyone, not even a guru, not even a meditation master, not even a yoga master or a master yogi. What they do is they lay out a blueprint, a plan of action. Try this and see if you don't get similar results. Barefoot says technology didn't exist to get there and back, surely, pre even floppy disk drives. Um, it's funny because Milk and I were talking about floppy disk uh, a week or so ago. I still have some laying around. No idea what's on them. No idea what I'm ever going to do with it. Um, Barefoot says that he's sorry cutting your narrative in half. No, actually, because it's all going to tie together. And here's the thing: conversations with you, they they go in all different directions, but we're usually able to tie it all together. It never strays away from the theme that we have going. So it's all good. Every question, every comment, um, all of it, all of it is relevant. All of it means something to the entire conversation, which is why I always say to people, and as I describe it to Mocha, um, it's an art form that, and you don't know where it's going to go. It's like a Jackson Pollock painting. Um, uh, Breifort says, what's on them? A very small file. I think it's some of the older books that I wrote. They were small books. Um, and I'm pretty sure that's what I put on the floppy disk, but I have no idea anymore. One, because I don't label anything, a bad habit. Um, and two, I have no way to ever find out again. I'm sure there's somebody has a 1999 computer, a 2002 computer, and I could give it to them. Breifort says, okay, back to Qigong, etc. There's a lot of stuff on YouTube with Daji Kung Fu demos, people moving each other with Qi and stuff. Yeah, that's always been the case. The funny thing is, mixed martial arts has put a lot of that on the back burner, because you take a Tai Chi master and you put them in the octagon and they're immediately knocked on the ass by somebody who's been a collegiate wrestler or Brazilian jiu-jitsu or full contact kickboxer. However, there's a few. I've seen some spooky stuff in martial arts that you just don't know. I was hit in the chest by a Wing Chun expert. He mimicked Bruce Lee's 1-inch punch. He put his fingers on my chest and dropped into a palm strike. And the next day, I was bruised on my back. Not on my chest, but on my back. And he said it's from the energy going through me. I don't know. Breifort says you can get quite a few text files on a floppy. Yeah, that's true. Yeah, the Tai Chi stuff does work, but only in ideal circumstances. And I think only someone who has deepened that practice to the point. Like I've seen yogis do some amazing stuff. Slow their heart rate down to the point where technically you don't even know if they're alive. Slowing their metabolism down. Scientific experiments where they were literally buried and survived, no food or water for weeks at a time. Yogis sticking a needle through their arm, pulling it out and stopping the bleeding. Just amazing stuff. But I've been meditating for 30 years. I've been doing yoga even longer. If I stuck a needle in my arm, I would bleed like a stuck pig. It would be a horrible mess, and I would be on my way to the emergency room in a heartbeat. Breifort says they need people standing still a lot of the time. Yeah. But again, there's a few who devoted their entire life who they do stuff that we just can't imagine. How do you get to that point? You really got to be dedicated. I mean, your entire life, maybe not even just your entire life, maybe you're like raised from that point all the way on. It's like kids who started doing gymnastics when they were 3 years old, and the stuff that they can do. But with yoga and with Tai Chi, Qigong, at its basis, they don't say believe all this stuff. They don't say believe that you can stick a needle through your arm. They don't say believe that you can stop your heart rate. They don't even say believe that you can find liberation. They offer you a plan, and if you follow it, see for yourself. I mentioned the other day, let's see, Breifort says, I did Wing Chun for over 15 years. Yeah, I remember. Tai Chi 10, and then footwork wasn't a high standard. And the footwork wasn't a high standard. The trapping and striking was okay. That's sort of what I liked about the Wing Chun was the trapping. And and the fact that everything was like fighting in a phone booth, up close. You're not overreaching. Of course, when I was doing a lot of that stuff, the UFC just came out, and all of a sudden, everyone had to learn ground fighting because we were told every fight goes to the ground. And then we saw what the Gracies did. Burfoot says generally amongst the groups, and then yeah, up close it's really good. Yeah, lots of elbows, lots of short strikes, short kicks. However, I'm actually hearing more of the opposite now. If a fight goes to the ground in the street, you're in trouble. You don't want to go to the ground. You don't want to pull guard. You want to put someone down or distract them or get away. You go on the ground in the street and you're going to be kicked, stomped. You're going to roll on a bottle or a needle or whatever. Burfoot says I can pin people and trap, but I'm not getting closing down. As in like a takedown, as in, a throw. That's what judo excels in. And that was right after doing some standing stuff, I went right into judo. Said he had one guy worked as a prison guard. He said our Wing Chun would actually be good in prison. I can see that, actually. Burfoot says, as in closing distance. Yeah, probably the single best wrestlers. Judo is good if they grab hold of you. But to close that distance, I think you need to train wrestling. You need to get that double leg, single leg takedown, that kind of stuff. Or boxing. There's a guy on YouTube, he's a former CIA operative, and he says the best self-defense is, one, awareness, being aware of the conditions, and the other is general boxing. Burfoot says if they're close, I can generally pin and counter, and he spent years training already arm-to-arm combat, arm-to-arm contact, sorry. That's a good mix, though. Kung Fu and Burfoot says, I admit I avoided closing as I felt it was trained unnaturally. I refused to use the head helmets and gloves, too. I had my own ideas. Yeah, I had a lot of my own ideas knocked out of me pretty quickly by people who were just so much better than me. At the same time, sometimes you become victim of your own talent, of your own skills, because you only know one way of doing things. That was Bruce Lee's genius, was I'm going to take a little bit of this, a little bit of that. I'm going to take Wing Chun, I'm going to take boxing, I'm going to take grappling, I'm going to take American fencing. Actually, I think it was European fencing, and mix them all in. Burfoot says after about 10 years, I was advanced enough to be left alone to train one-on-one, kind of, yeah, I can see that. And once you get a lot of the basics down, you have it. That's really my goal as a yoga asana teacher, is I don't want to keep showing up and teaching you every day. I don't mind, but I want you to work in these basics and dive deep. I'd rather you do 5 postures every day and really get a sense of what they offer than to show up every day and take you through a routine of 35 postures, 35 poses, because then we're just skimming. Take a couple. Some people say in self-defense, if you got a jab and a cross, you got a decent front kick, and maybe one throw, you're good to go. Bruce Lee did the straight blast, where it was just straightforward. Basically a cross, 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 coming straight ahead. Maybe cross, cross, and a front kick, but nothing fancy. If you try something fancy in a street fight against 2 people, 3 people, you're in a world of trouble unless you are really outstanding at what you do. And the people that you're fighting don't know what they're doing, which is a possibility. Burford says some Wing Chun guys had leanings. Some would trip you up, throw you. I rode the Tai Chi in. Yeah, Wing Chun. There's even some grappling involved in Wing Chun at a certain level. Burford says, yeah, if on contact, you think you know what to do instinctively, that's it. Yeah. And it's probably better to just go full in than try to overthink it. If you're confronted with someone and you think, okay, this is what I'm going to do, it's already too late. Which is interesting because, I started the conversation talking about the Matrix and conspiracy theories and yoga and martial arts for that matter. Because what we think we have this sense of free will. Barefoot Burpee says some people treated the class like boxing, middling, thumping each other. Others wanted finesse. Yeah. Then I think it's up to the instructor to say, hey, are you thumping each other or are you practicing Wing Chun? Because you can't be doing both. If you want to practice the art. But, it was Mike Tyson. He said, everyone has a plan until they get punched in the face. Barefoot says, carry on with your Matrix. I'll be quiet. No, like I said, I appreciate it all. And it's good to pivot. And it all ties in. It never might not seem like it, but it does, especially as we keep going. Here's what the instructor, Barefoot says, the instructor was a hard man by nature and a bodyguard by profession. Yeah, so that's somebody who has to know. They has to know what worked. Because you don't get, or you don't often get, second chances in those kind of situations. Barefoot says he liked the violent side, but as he got older, he did get more gentle. Yeah, life either softens you up or you don't live too long. Barefoot says he knew him from around 40 to 58. So I would imagine, yeah, by the age of 58, Christ, that's my age. I'm a different guy than I was. 40, definitely from 30. And by 20, I could say unrecognizable, although some people would say, no, you're the same guy. Different, maybe a little softer, but overall, some people might say, I'm just as annoying at 58 as I was when I was 20. And they have a valid point. I'm not going to argue that at all. So here's what the yogis saw 3,000 years ago. That we had consciousness and we had the senses. And that the senses were bombarding us with information. So much so that the human system had to evolve a way of filtering in only what was important. Otherwise, we would be curled up in a ball, unable to move. Life would just be overwhelming us. way too much information coming in. We only pick up not even a fraction of the information that consciousness is picking up, pure consciousness. So I broke it down into pleasure, aversion, and neutral. Obviously, we're drawn towards pleasure. What we find pleasurable might be something bad for us that we find pleasurable, but we're still drawn to it. Aversion, things we don't want, things that we think of as dangerous or taste bad or smell bad or don't feel good to touch. Although some of them might end up bringing us greater pleasure. Certain foods, people who don't like vegetables. Vegetables are good for you, but some people have an aversion to them. Question is why? And the why is because they have those patterns developed from a lifetime that says vegetable bad, chocolate cake good. Here's where the matrix is involved. We have no idea consciousness is doing this. We have no idea that we're getting all these information from our senses and that consciousness itself is making these decisions, good, bad, neutral. And we're responding to them and we're thinking, I made this choice to have chocolate cake. You can't force me to eat vegetables. I'm standing up for my own beliefs. Vegetables are bad. Or smoking is good. Or I know smoking is good, but I'm drawn to it. I do it anyway. No one can tell me what to do. The thing is, you're not the one making that choice. It was already made. What you're doing is living out the patterns that have been shown through a lifetime of consciousness, shown through all that information coming to you and consciousness, or we could call it subconscious mind. We could call it unconsciousness. Doesn't matter. To me, it's all consciousness. Subconscious, unconscious, it's just consciousness. Unconscious means there is just nothing there to be conscious of. Doesn't mean the absence of consciousness. There can't be an absence of consciousness. Otherwise, what would you awake to? Does that mean consciousness just stops and then comes back again? Something to think about. But here's the great thing with yoga. Let's see. Scarlett Clark says, I look like a triangle. That depends. What angle are you holding up the phone? Am I this kind of triangle? Am I this kind of triangle? So I guess it depends on your perspective. Let's see. Baldy. The funny thing is that I usually don't read comments, but when they're particularly clever, like calling a bald man baldy, I got to read it out loud because, you know, you don't get that kind of humor for free often. Usually you got to go to a show. You got to pay good money to a professional comedian who can make those keen observations. Anyway, you're welcome. And so we liken it to, I'm making these decisions, I'm making these choices. I'm being funny. However, the reality, the stark reality, is that it's just reactionary. It's a reaction from consciousness itself that this is good, this is bad. So when we think in terms of conspiracy theories, how do we know what's true if we don't even know why we're making some type of decision? How do we know? I always go back to Brian Cady, who was a modern, some people call her a modern Buddha. Some people say, you know, might liken her to a teacher of Vedic wisdom, a yogi. Who knows? Doesn't matter. Just a label. she has a 4-point form of inquiry. The main points are, is this true? Just asking yourself anything. It can be a conspiracy theory. It could be a thought that you have. It could be a belief that you have. It could be any of those things. Something that you have always taken for granted, a belief that you were raised on. And simply ask yourself, is this true? Because most of the time, we never ask. We're handed these beliefs by parents, siblings, teachers, the media, YouTube. Back to the point that Barefoot Burpee and I were making. We'll have a Wing Chun master who will say, this is all you need to defend yourself. A Tai Chi master says, when you master Tai Chi, you will be able to sense danger from a distance. You don't even have to fight. When we first taken it, maybe we don't even ask, is this true? Do we ever question the beliefs that we inherited from our parents? The beliefs that we got from our teachers, from clergy, going to church? What if, actually, Barefoot and I had a conversation, this was a while ago, mistranslations that are in the Bible. Not saying right or wrong, they were literally mistranslated from the original language to when it finally came in English. So how much has been based upon mistranslations that we know of and mistranslations that we don't even know of? What if you inherited a belief from your father, you got it from his father, and yet he slightly misheard it, or he got it completely wrong? He thought he said this, but in reality, something totally different. So we never question, is this true? And then we watch something on YouTube or somewhere else, and we think, well, this seems true. This seems right. That's back to the conspiracy theory that Barefoot says he doesn't believe in the moon landing. The valid question is, how do we know? I'm not saying that it was faked, and I'm not saying that it wasn't. But what I'm saying is, it's valid to ask, is this true? And then the follow-up question is, can you absolutely know for certain that this is true? Without a shadow of a doubt, without even a trace of uncertainty, do you know that it's true? Barefoot says part of growing up is unlocking the family tapestry we grew up with, some truth, some suspect. I hope so. In that case, I actually agree with you 100%. But in that case, how few people actually grow up? How many people reach that stage of adulthood where they never question that? They never question for me, never questioning religious beliefs. To me, that seems like almost like a slap in the face to God. You should question, is this true? Is this how God, can I absolutely know for certain that it's true? Is this how God wishes me to live my life? Whatever concept of God you may not have. The third line of inquiry from Brian Katie: how do you act when you believe this is true? So if you have a belief that God wants you to do this, how do you act? And are you acting on something that you've never questioned? Do you just think it's true? You just believe it's true? Barefoot says it's hard, painful growing up, and discouraged. Lucifer, the light bringer, we are taught to avoid. It's true. That's a good point, actually. Very good point, especially with Lucifer, the light bringer, that once I'm actually hopefully going to lead to that point. Once something is exposed to the light of awareness, only then is there such a thing as choice. Until then, it's just reaction. When awareness shines its light on anything, then we become responsive versus being reactive. That's how you escape the matrix. Here's the hard light. You believe that Tai Chi is going to protect you in the street fight, and somebody blasts you with a hard left. You're on your ass. And then you think, okay, I know some Gracie Jiu-Jitsu. I got him just where I want him. I'm on the ground. I'm going to choke him out. And somebody comes up and kicks you in the head. You're out cold. That's the hard light of truth. There it is. The light bringer in combat boots who kicks you in the back of the head. You've been exposed to a hard truth. It's not always good to go to the ground in a fight. Tai Chi doesn't always work in every situation in self-defense. Had you questioned that when your Tai Chi teacher said this is all you need to do in a fight, if you had said, is that true? Can I know for certain that's true? Maybe I should test it out and find out if it's true. You might have been saved getting put on your ass. And if you had asked yourself, do fights always go to the ground? Is it always better to be on the ground in a fight? You might have saved yourself a kick in the head. Ask questions. That's the thing with a conspiracy theory. Don't believe it just because it's a conspiracy theory, that it's alternative thinking, so it must be something there. None of it's true. None of it. Not absolutely. Truth is fluid, flexible. Reality is flexible. The truth of this desk that I'm pounding on, and I always pound when I'm trying to make a point, is that it's solid, that at least once every 2 or 3 days I'm going to stub my toe on it and it's going to hurt a lot. And at the same time, this desk is 99.99% empty space, appearing as a solid desk. Two realities. One of them hurts a whole lot when I stub my toe. However, if I were always to believe that this desk was solid and always going to be solid, then I'd be disappointed when it disintegrates, which it will one day. It'll go back to that empty state. Always goes back to the Heart Sutra. Emptiness is form. Form is emptiness. Doesn't say emptiness becomes form. Doesn't say form reverts back to emptiness. It's one and the exact same thing right now. Burford said I had 2 different teachers, teachers for Tai Chi. They were both, one especially pacifist. One said that his peaceful demeanor would stop conflict. We disagreed, but he was skilled as a teacher. There's a big belief that in yoga as well, the practice of ahimsa, non-harmfulness, will discourage violence from happening. I tend to agree. At the same time, I'm perfectly prepared and willing to defend myself and my loved ones. Should my yogic powers fail me, I want a good front kick. I want a jab and a right cross, and I want to know at least one way to strangle someone. I want to know how to choke someone out. A few basic things. Years ago, I read in a martial art magazine, the slap and press. Foolproof self-defense. Anything that comes at you, slap it aside, put them in a choke. Put them in a chokehold. Slap and press. It'll take them out every time. And it'll actually work. But not every time, and not in every situation, and not for everybody. So it's good to know a few other things as well. Question everything is the point of the whole thing. The way you escape the matrix, and we're all in the matrix, the way to get liberated is to shine the light of awareness. The point that Barefoot Burpee made. Lucifer, the light bringer. Not a bad guy. Not the devil. The one who brings the light of knowledge. Barefoot says, as an American, it's your constitutional right and expectation to defend and enforce your rights. Not only that, it's my right and expectation as an American to force my will on those who don't pay attention to me, or believe as I believe. Um, we are definitely a culture of force. A wonderful book by David Hawkins, Power versus Force, the difference between the two. We believe we're powerful when all we're actually doing is exerting force. And force doesn't always work. Force actually seldom works. True power always works. You got to know the difference, and you got to find a way to express power at the expense of always using force. Beaufort says, and for good reason, as long as the reason is good. Discernment is key. That ties back into what you were saying about the Lightbringer, Lucifer. Discernment. That's the gift of yoga. Discernment. Does this work? Am I happier after a year of truly practicing yoga than when I started? Am I more centered, peaceful, more joyful after a year of meditating, after a month of meditating? If you're not, after a year, maybe you're meditating wrong. Maybe it's not working for you. Maybe you need to do something different. Find out and ask. How many people go through life without ever asking, who am I? Not in an abstract way, but literally, truly wanting to find out, who am I? And never asking those questions. So yeah, it's interesting. And I don't know if you can hear that. My cat is meowing because I have the door shut. So that's my take on the subject of one thing I did want to tie together, why I put yoga, because yoga offers a path. And again, you only have to try it. You don't have to believe it. Of gaining that light of awareness to attain liberation, to seeing that discernment, to escaping the path of reactivity, where we're being bombarded with that information, and consciousness decides what's good, what's pleasant, what's to be avoided, where we get to be responsive. It's all in the practice. However, this is what the yogis said several thousand years ago. It's also what neuroscience is showing now. And you can find that information online, neuroscience and yoga, that literally we gain access to that unlimited awareness that is always present. It's actually our reality. It's actually who we are. And yet it's been narrowed down into the singular focus that we are this individual being based upon our thoughts, based upon our beliefs. And none of it's ever been questioned. If you want to be free, if you want to be liberated, not just from everyday reality, but also from the conspiracy theories as well. When people say, do you believe this conspiracy or that conspiracy or whatever? My answer is always, I really don't care. Because if you want to be liberated from all of it, just ask the right questions to yourself. No one else has the answers. No one else has the answers. Back to that point of believing Tai Chi is always going to work and that ground fighting is always the answer. No one can tell you otherwise until you are hit in the face or end up on your butt. Then you know. Life will always give you the experience that you need to find out if you're open to it. So, all right. I think that's it. And barefoot. So now, you know what I mean? It all tied together. So it was a good thing that we started talking about martial arts. It was a good thing that the conversation took that turn. You just never know how it's all going to unwind. And it's always fun to get there. Sometimes it doesn't have a point. Not every conversation needs to nail an answer down and say, I've made this definitive argument. Well, Burford says, I think Tai Chi fighting does look a bit like wrestling. Sticky hands. It is sticky hands, right? Is great value to a wrestler. As a matter of fact, years ago, I trained some high school wrestlers and suggested Tai Chi just for the hand movement. Yes, like wrestling from concept down, and wrestling is probably from physical into technical. Pushing hands. Really, yeah, Wing Chun is sticky hands. Okay, thanks. But both actually, really, they tie into grappling. If you're able to redirect any grab in your direction, then you're one step ahead of the game. It's a useful skill. As many useful skills that you can bring to bear in the appropriate situation, the better. And especially if you're trained enough where you don't think about it, where you don't have to say, okay, now apply pushing hands, where it just becomes instinctive, actually. Brookwood says they probably meet intent, middle, but Tai Chi does have an aversion to physical fitness and physical application, which is funny because some other things, Krav Maga, in my opinion, too much on physical fitness. For me, I think physical fitness should be applied on your own. Get in shape. But I don't think you should go to a Krav Maga class and have to do wind sprints and endless push-ups and all this other stuff. That's a fitness class. Teach Krav Maga, which, is the opposite of what you're saying with Tai Chi, where, they don't do any physical fitness. Of course, if you're doing Tai Chi and Qigong, you are getting modern exercise. You're working the energy body, you're working the subtle body. And the not intent is what he was saying, is what Barefoot was saying. So yeah, I think we need a mixture. But again, I think that fitness is your own goal and pursuit. And then if you're taking a martial art, now of course if you're kickboxing, that's different, something along those lines. Barefoot says they really like boxing footwork, but it does require a certain amount of clear space to pull it off. Dirty boxing. Some call it Irish boxing, which is probably a slur on the Irish, where you are, it's sort of almost like Qigong. There's lots of elbows, lots of headbutts, short punches, lots of uppercuts, which are really hard to defend against. Barefoot says a wrestler's conditioning will outdo a Tai Chi guy, chi power. I agree with that as well. Also, it's really hard for a Tai Chi guy to defend against a double leg takedown. I actually think 99% of the time, 98% of the time, a wrestler is going to take the Tai Chi guy down on the ground. Might even take the Wing Chun guy down on the ground. We'll take a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu guy on the ground. However, he won't have the submission work to do anything once he's there. When I was in judo class once, I was practicing randori, grappling, with a college wrestler who easily dominated until he pinned me, and then he relaxed, because for him, it was over. I was pinned. However, in judo and jiu-jitsu, you're never pinned. Not that way, at least. So it was still on. And as soon as he relaxed, he was able to put on an arm bar. Burford says, yeah, like a mobile Wing Chun. I never use Wing Chun in Wing Chun Tan Sa, which is the, is that dropping the hand? Sort of a block? I might be wrong about that. It's been ages since I thought about it. And some other moves when I shadow box, a little too static. For me, man, I think the dirty boxing, a few kicks, and some chokes. I don't think you need arm bars. I don't think you need wrist locks. Not that they don't have some value, but if you're just learning the basics, well, isn't every block, Barefoot says there are no blocks per se. Isn't like every block also a strike in Wing Chun, or am I thinking of a different art? But yeah, dirty boxing, eye gouge. Barefoot says dirty and better, and I agree. The only way I'm going to fight is if there's no other possible way that I see of avoiding it. And then I took a class by Tim Larkin, who's a American self-defense expert. He helped train in the Navy SEALs. And his saying is, violence is never the answer unless it's the only answer, because there's no other way out. Burford says that becomes a strike, I suppose. Combination of Wing Chun, dirty boxing might not be a bad combination. But really, I think just pure self-defense, the less is better. You got some basics down of the dirty boxing. You might want to throw or a takedown. You want to know how to get back up off the ground as quickly as possible. Burford says, in reality, the Tan Sa, S-A-U, right? I believe it's pronounced, is done so fast, it's just a transition, but people see them as moves. Yeah, I could see that. Interesting. But to actually like vectors, it's really like dirty boxing that's been overanalyzed. It's a good analogy, a good way of seeing it. I forget the name of I can look it up real quick if I wanted. He trained the soldiers. He trained the British soldiers. Fairfield. Colonel Fairfield. He trained the British soldiers during World War II. He trained the SAS during World War II. And it wasn't involved. It wasn't weeks or months of practice your front kick, your side kick, your roundhouse kick, your spinning back kick, practice your jab and your cross and your hook. It was finger to the eyes, chop to the throat, choke someone out, throw one down, boot to the head. And I think they covered all that. Even with the special forces, they covered all that in like a week or so. Burford says Tan is splitting, I think, like side on a jab, open hand. Actually, Fairbairn, yes, that's the one. And Thomas, hey Thomas, now we're talking. Now we got several martial artists here. Aggression can make even an untrained individual formidable, especially if they got some size on them. Wing Chun says, or Barefoot says, no Wing Chun move should end as the move. It should end as a punch, slap, takedown, eye gouge, etc. Hey, Thomas. Thomas says fighting is in the DNA. Probably true. I have I have mixed thoughts on that, coming from a yogic perspective, and at the same time having some background in martial arts as well. Either way, as I said, for me, I practice ahimsa, non-harm, non-violence, even when it comes to YouTube trolling. I try my best to be non-harmful for them across the board with everyone. But at the same time, there's value in knowing that you're going to take care of yourself, that you're going to take care of your family. Not only value, I think it's important, which is why Shaolin monks practice non-harmfulness. And yet, especially back in the day, you didn't mess with a Shaolin monk. Thomas says that he studied Wing Chun. Wing Chun? Is that what you studied, Thomas? Barefoot says if you watch a fight and it's a Wing Chun guy and it looks like Wing Chun, they've messed up or they aren't advanced, in my opinion. Interesting. Barefoot says the best guys, it looks like a bodyguard, a security takedown. And Thomas says, problem I had with it looking was the mindset of the teacher and practitioners. Yeah, we had Wing Chun. We had a previous conversation about the teachers and practitioners. So it was quite interesting. And we're pretty much in agreement with you there. Thomas says it was an arrogance based off of no real experience. I get that all the time, actually. That was actually, Thomas, the whole basis of the conversation from yoga and everything. Everything has to be based upon real experience. If I say, if you meditate, it's going to bring you a sense of peace, that should come from my experience of meditation, not because I read it in a book and I think this might work. Barefoot says, if my elbow isn't in the face within 2 seconds, I've probably lost or I'm not trying hard. And Thomas says, I'm not interested in a teacher anymore. That's why I just look for other people to share with and just be our best. And Barefoot says they only used it about 4 times over nearly 20 years. Yeah, probably if you have to use it, you might not have tried hard enough to get out of it. And that was always my experience. Back in the days, back in my bar days, I never tried to get out of anything. And which is always a mistake. For me, it was a mistake being in a bar to begin with, but that's a whole nother, we'll cover that in another conversation. Thomas, one of the things that we were talking about is once you know the bare minimum of how to defend yourself, it's probably better to continuously practice that than learning more and more things. How many different ways do you have to know to kick someone? Are you ever, unless somebody is completely unaware and unexpected, are you ever going to use a crescent kick in a fight? Barefoot says you can go beyond your current available teachers. I train with 2 guys sometimes, but not this year. We train sparring, sticky hands only. Thomas says if it gets real, I'm looking for a weapon, which is a good idea. And yes, and being fit counts for so much in terms of confidence. I agree with that as well. Being an ultra runner helps my confidence, because if you don't catch me in the first mile, then hey, I won. Thomas, your thoughts on Krav Maga? I was saying to Barefoot, I don't like the fact that they spend so much time on fitness. I'd love to do Krav Maga if I could just go in and learn Krav Maga and not have to do push-ups and wind sprints and all that other stuff, all of which I love doing, but I do it on my time, and I don't need to pay someone to get me to do them. I would pay someone to teach me Krav Maga, though. Thomas says, too much cult mentality out there for me anymore. I've seen the best and the worst of it. Yeah. Burford says he used a large wing binder as a defense weapon once. Very Born Identity. Wasn't there a scene where he used a magazine? Thomas says it's good principles, and I'm not concerned with disarms. Unreal, in my opinion. I would agree with that as well. That's the same thing Tim Larkin says. If you're facing a guy with a knife, you're probably going to get stabbed, especially if you try to disarm. Burford says he thinks Krav looks quite like Wing Chun, though. Yeah, maybe with some more elbows, some more throat attacks, like a military version. Yeah, exactly. Krav has good. Thomas says Krav has good stress testing training. So does Judo. Probably better in Judo. Probably better Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, I think. Although there is some Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu is awesome, but there is some truth, I believe, that you can't really defend from a thumb in the eye. You can't defend from a bite. You can't defend from. I think that being really good in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu can also be false sense of confidence in a street fight. I'm going to take you down and I'm going to choke you out. And maybe 8 out of 10 times they might be correct. But you have those two guys who just aren't going to be taken down. Or when you go in to take them down, you're hit with a right cross right between the eyes and you're laid out. Or you take a guy down and the buddy comes up behind you and kicks you in the head. Or you take a guy down and you land on a bottle and you're cut. I don't know. Burford says I just block kicks with it. Hey, any tool that works, in my opinion. So, all right, guys. I'm coming up on my hour limit, hour-ish limit. I shoot for 30 minutes, and then I try to, if it's interesting like today, then we take it a bit longer. The wedge is a good principle. You'd have to describe the wedge offhand. I can't think of it. Thomas says nothing good happens after 11. Best defense, don't be there. Definitely agree with that. And nothing good happens after 11 in a bar. Of course, going back to the self-inquiry of is that true and is it always true? I have met some interesting people in bars after 11. So, Burford says, yeah, wedge, fence, and I like Philly shelf. Definitely need you guys to clarify that for me. I think, Burford, you said it was Fairbairns. Oh, Jeff Thompson. I believe I have a couple of his books laying around. Interesting stuff. If I'm thinking of the right person, didn't he write a book about ground fighting that was not the Gracie Jiu-Jitsu ground fighting, but the thumb in your eye, bite your throat, that type of. I think maybe we were talking about dirty boxing. I think if you are well trained in Thai boxing, it's going to take you pretty far. Thai boxing, you got that straight blast. You got low kicks coming from the shin. No real skill is needed, but there's so much power. Thomas says Jeff has written several books. He is a great fighter and philosopher. I got to check and see the book that I'm thinking that I got it in the other room. I'll bring that up next conversation. I'll dig it out. So Thai fighting and a little bit of judo has you covered. Everything you need. That and the dirty tricks, Fairbanks, thumb in the eye, that type of stuff. All right, guys. So I'm going to end it now. Got a few things to do. Still not feeling 100% yet. Barefoot says he likes using his shoulders to block and knees to make space and drive in. That seems very I'm missing a word in my martial art vocabulary. But again, anything that works, in my opinion. I'm just putting those things together. For me, several years of judo, the most useful thing I learned, how to fall, how to get back up. Let's see, Barefoot says, yes, on the Jeff books, read a few. Doorman, do like Wing Chun in my experience. Duncan Walsh is here, missed tonight. Hope you're feeling better soon. Thank you, Duncan, I appreciate it. He was a nightclub security doorman in the UK. That I do remember. I think I get him confused with, what's the guy that played Bane in the Batman movie? He was a British criminal. He's in prison, considered like one of the toughest men alive. Thomas says, simulating conversation, a pleasure, gentlemen. Thank you, Thomas. I appreciate you stopping in. I appreciate the input on the martial arts, especially. Barefoot is saying, hi, Dunk, good to chat. Thomas and Eric. Tom Hardy, that's the one who I was thinking of. Bronson, yes, Charles Bronson. I don't know how I could forget, because actor Charles Bronson, prisoner Charles Bronson. Yeah, I've read one of his books on Kindle, and it was pretty interesting. And his whole thing was just brutalize your opponent. Just do it all. Bite their nose off, rip an ear off, put a thumb in the eye, grab a tongue and yank, grab a testicle and yank, kick a knee out. Pretty brutal stuff. Yeah, I saw that he, Barefoot says, has renamed now, I think, Salvador Dali, I think maybe. I saw that he actually has, I know he's painting, and he actually has that Salvador Dali style mustache. Chimpanzee technique. Yeah, go crazy. If anything, it would definitely discourage some people. All right, so guys, thanks for the conversation. I appreciate it. Duncan, I hope we can hook up in a conversation later this week. Barefoot, thank you for all the information and the conversation and all the twists and turns that we take. Duncan says that doesn't make someone tough in my book. I agree, 100%. It does. Basically, what we were talking about, Duncan, was viable means of, if you absolutely had to defend yourself, the best ways to do it. Let's see. Barefoot says the times I was attacked didn't warrant chimp mode. Very few things ever do. Duncan says, yes, we'll check my emails. Awesome. Actually, if you want, send me an email of what days might work best for you. I don't know why I really like that chimp mode. But yeah, if you're in a bar, there's no reason to ever fight like that, in my opinion. If you're in a bar, there's no reason to fight. It's stupidity. It's two people thumping their chest. However, if you are in a situation where there's absolutely no way to remove yourself from it, it would seem chimp mode would be the way to do it. All right, guys. So I will see everyone tomorrow morning for some burpees. Hopefully, I will have regained some energy for the morning. It's supposed to be Navy SEALs. We'll see how it shapes up. I'll see you guys. Thanks for the conversation, and take care.